And welcome to the big kickoff League of Ireland Sports Bar with myself, Roy Shanahan, and Aaron Callaghan. I'll name out every club you played for, Aaron, but that might use up all the time we have this evening. So, yeah, we had two good games today, Sligo Rovers and Longford, which was an interesting game. I won't say exciting, but interesting game. And of course, Shamrock Rovers and Dundalk, which was on earlier. A 2-1 victory to Shamrock Rovers, Aaron. One thing that I'm noticing, before we get into the game itself, one thing that I noticed is that they're starting to play a lot of three at the back. When you were in managing, or when you are in managing, three at the back, what problems does three at the back and what positives does it give you?
I think there's mixed reactions about people playing three at the back. Some people think it's a very negative system and very defensive system, i.e., when you're defending, that you're bringing two fullbacks in and you've got five defenders across the back. Personally, I would have been playing three at the back. I think back in '88 when I was playing for Crewe, Dario Gradi would have been one of the first managers to bring in three defenders. And we used that in an attacking sense, i.e., getting our two fullbacks wide and high, putting three players in the middle of the park to combat, mostly against two midfield players, and most of all is to try and get two forwards into the game. And I think looking at the game tonight between Rovers and Dundalk, we seem to have a good balance with the three defenders there. Now, I know Lopez is away on international duty, but the three defenders that they had playing tonight was Scales, Hoare, and Lee Grace. And there was a great balance between the three of them. Obviously, Scales being a left-footed player, Hoare, who has played wide right and can play down that right-hand side, and Lee Grace, who's played in the middle or on the right-hand side. So the balance between the three that they have at the moment within that Shamrock Rovers structure looks very exciting going forward. And to me, that was the biggest pick out. They seem to be more balanced this year. They've got left-footed players playing on the right, on the right side of the pitch. Kavanagh playing left back, who's been up and down the line all evening, and they got Finn back in midfield, in the middle of midfield, and he played a lot. Last season he played a lot wide in that right position, and he's not a wide right player. I mean, Gannon is a natural fit, and he was a good signing for Shamrock Rovers. So the three at the back for me, depending on the manager and depending on the tactical principles that he employs, is an attacking system. But I know there are some people out there who might look at it as a defensive structure. And of course, with Stephen Kenny trying to play it for Ireland in the last couple of games and the negative results going against it, a lot of people out there might think it is a negative system and it is a defensive system. But, having played in it, having coached it and having managed it, for me, there are aspects where it is an exciting system going forward and you do get more players in the box.
Yeah. One thing that stood out was the amount of space that Burke found for himself in the system. It wasn't necessary. It was that in-between role, but he has that freedom to drift from left to right to wherever he really wanted, didn't he?
Yeah, and I think that's, when you try and get players playing in between the lines, you've got to make sure that defensively, when you're playing against it, that your whole team, your team shape is very narrow. Okay, so those type of players, Burke, when he gets into those positions in between the lines, he's very dangerous and he's very exciting. I didn't think he played very well tonight. I don't think it was his best game. I think Mandra was the standout player for Rovers in relation to the positions he took up on the night, culminating in an unbelievable strike. I don't know, the people that were watching it there tonight. What disappointed me, or what I was surprised about, was the amount of players, when that free kick took place and Mandrew put his hand on the ball, the amount of defenders from Dundalk. I think I counted 5 defenders who turned their back on the ball. And he played a quick 1-2 before he got the ball back, and then obviously with a great strike. But I thought he was the standout player in that position between the lines. I thought it caused them a lot of problems, particularly in the first half. Second half, I thought Dundalk obviously came out on a much better side. But when you get players like that who are intelligent, who make good decisions and who execute those decisions, and in those positions, will always cause defensive problems.
Yeah. Shamrock Rovers started the game really well and generally dictated that first half. Why did they dictate the first half, and what was Dundalk's problem?
I still think Dundalk are in a stage where when you bring in 3, 4, 5 different players to what you've had from a previous season, that you need to get those players communicating with each other. I don't think they've had that opportunity to, 3 games in, a very stop-start pre-season, and I think that's been the same for most teams. The stop-start pre-season has affected a lot of teams, but when you bring in 3, 4, 5 new players into a squad, you need to get them working together. And when I mean working together in terms of the communication between each other, verbally, non-verbally, on the training ground, off the training ground. And it seems to me that they just haven't gelled at that yet. But when they do, they will be a force, because I thought they were very good second half. How they didn't equalise 3 or 4, I think 4 or 5 chances I can recollect where they probably should have scored. Manus made 2 or 3 really, really good saves. But those new players they're brought in, I can't pronounce one or two of the names. The Norwegian guy, Missigan, I think it was his name, and Missigan, he came on in the second half, and he cut inside Liam Scales, and it was a really poor execution on the shot that he had, and he probably should have equalised. So they've got 3, 4, 5 players. Junior, who come on the right hand side, looked an exciting prospect when he came on for the last half an hour. So I think that they've got a little bit of work on the tactic side of it, and communicate more with each other on the training pitch, which will help them going forward on the pitch. And I just think at present now, after 3 games, Rovers just seem to have more of a settled squad at present.
Yeah, they look very fluid in the first half. Again, Chris McCann in the midfield, for me, he just dictates the play. His eye for a pass, the wait for the pass. I didn't think he had his best game, but I just think he's very influential in there. Again, the other side of Rovers, they seem, as you said, not Dundalk, but Shamrock Rovers seem a lot more drilled. So when they were squeezing up as a group together, they were finding it very hard. Dundalk were finding it very hard to find those options to get out from the back, and they were losing the ball on the halfway line, nearly every time in the first half. So how hard is it to coach a team to press, and how long does that take?
Well, when you're looking minimum 6 weeks, particularly with new players coming into the system, and you're trying to get your tactical principles across, or what way because some managers will want you to defend when the ball goes wide on a fullback or on an attacking left side of midfield player, and once the ball goes wide, that's the trigger for the whole of the team to go and press in that corner, in that area. Some managers want to press more when the ball comes in the midfield area, so they will set up traps where they can trap you in the midfield area. So depending on the manager, depending on, I suppose, the team as well, because when you come to a team like the Shamrock Rovers, who are defending champions, they're going to have a lot of possession on the ball, and I think that the wider you play as a team, the harder it's going to be when you're playing against Rovers, because they do like to get the likes of the Burke, as we said, the likes of Manju, the likes of Ronan Finn playing in between the lines. So you need to make sure that you are really, really narrow as a team. And if I was playing against that Shamrock Rovers team, I would be making sure that we would be forcing them to play wide, and then obviously set traps in the wide areas. And I don't think they've done it very well in the first half tonight, Shamrock or Dundalk. But coming out for the second half, particularly in the first 15, 20 minutes when they should have equalised, I thought they started to get on top, and they were, very, very attacking side second half, and they seem to got the momentum shifted towards Dundalk second half, and I thought Duffy on the left wing was very influential in their play, and they seemed everything that went through Dundalk tonight went through Duffy on the left hand side, and he probably should have scored himself. I know he hit the bar with a speculative shot when he came inside, but he seems to be the real gem in their side, and makes things happen.
Yeah. If you're watching and you want to interact, you can send a comment in. You can ask Aaron Callaghan a question, or you can comment on any of the games that were on tonight. Just on the goal, Danny Mandrew's goal, as you said, there was no pressing. They turned their back the minute the free kick was given. The goalkeeper, Abibi, he's someone now that Nathan even said in the first game after the President's Cup, I can see him costing them games. Well, you can definitely see now that he's going to cost them games. He's one of those.
Well, he's a young player coming in, and it's probably his first experience of playing at that level. And I think people underestimate this league when they come over from the UK, when they come in from different clubs. I mean, this is a tough league to play in, and anyone that's played in it, and anyone that's managing it, and anyone that's coaching it will tell you that, it's not as easy. And, it's very easy to make comments from the sideline. And it's very easy to make comments from different countries. But when you're playing in a league that's as strong as the Premier League, particularly the Premier League, we've got most teams in it now who are professional. When I was playing in it, there would have been a lot of semi-professional setups. But they're now fully professional clubs. They're working full time, and it is a tough league. So it's a baptism of fire for this keeper, and everybody knows that if a keeper makes one mistake, he's at fault for everything else. And you harp back onto Mark Travers there in the Ireland game. And I know Mark very well, and I think he's going to be an excellent keeper going forward. He's a very, very young keeper, and he makes one mistake, and all of a sudden everybody's trying to chastise him and have a go at him. And it's the one position that you just cannot afford to make mistakes. And when you look at the difference between Rovers keeper in Manus, who's a very experienced keeper, a very, very good keeper, very calm, very level-headed keeper, and has been probably the difference between Rovers winning the league, because most people say that you do need experience in those areas that are through the middle of the park. So when you look at the centre halves, the midfield players, and particularly at the striking end of it, if you've got a core strength of experienced players, and then you throw the young lads in and around you, I think it settles you very well. And when you got a young keeper playing for Dundalk, who would be challenging, particularly at the start of the season, and he's making mistakes early on, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the likes of Andy Boyle and Dan Cleary playing centre half. They're going to have to nearly play in goal for him. And I've been in that position as well, where I've had to be a player where we've thrown in a young keeper in the UK, and you're nearly trying to do two jobs. You're trying to do your own job, knowing that this kid is a young kid, and you're trying to keep the pressure off him. And to do that, you need to make sure that you're playing outside the box. So you're trying to squeeze the play up outside the box, and any crosses that are coming in, you're hoping that he can deal with it, with the fact that he doesn't have any strikers challenging him. So particularly in the second goal, I thought it was a very poor effort. Dylan Moccia scored it. It was just a speculative strike from outside the box. I think it went through Andy Boyle's legs per se, but it was still one of those shots that should have been saved.
Yeah. Again, though, the pressing, they let him run, and if you let someone run, he's going to take that shot. So, and there's always that chance if you shoot, you score. So, again, the difference for me between Shamrock Rovers and Dundalk was the intensity of their press, the intensity of looking to get the ball back. One of the things that I did notice, they changed to a 4 at the back in the second half. When they changed to the 4, they seem to be used to it. That's really what I was going to say. They seem to be used to it. It's something they were familiar with from the season last and before, and maybe drifting back towards Stephen Kenny's time. But when he made changes, I'll change that. When he made changes, should he be making changes so that he doesn't have to make changes again after that in the second half? So when he makes his first initial change where he puts Sloggett in the back line, should he be not having to make another change? Is that kind of him displaying that he wasn't sure what he should have done in the first place?
Well, it's very difficult because when you lose your skipper, when you lose your centre half, when Gartner goes off injured, it throws all the plans and all the training plans that you would have set up during the week. So you would have set up to play a certain way, and then when you get one of your main centre halves injured, and I hope he's okay. I hope Brian Gartner's okay. It looked nasty. I always get worried when I see an injury when there's no contact with players, and he just seemed to twist on the park. And you're just hoping it's not one of those bad ligament injuries, and that's probably what I've seen anyway. And I've had a couple of me time as a player as well, and it's just hope he recovers fairly well. And when you lose an influential player like Brian, it does affect your team without a shadow of a doubt. And then you have to make a change, as you say, with Sloggett coming on. Do you go to your, do you stick with a back 4? Do you change to a back 3? Where does Sloggett want to play within the system? And all the I suppose plans that you would have had during the week from an attacking perspective, from a defensive perspective, sort of go out the window a little bit. But they're experienced enough to know now that and Sloggett's played. I think I would have give Slogger his debut at UCD, going back, and I'm trying to think of the year, and I can't think of the year outside. And he's a good midfield player. And it was disappointing to see him going back off after coming on. But they were chasing the game at that stage. But when you miss, as I said, you know, the hard part was when he did go off. But they still had, you know, Boyle and Cleary are two really experienced centre halves, particularly at that level. I thought Domigan, the fullback, came into the game more when he went as a natural right back. And he was causing a few problems, particularly late in the second half of that game. And you know, Hoban, who's always a threat going forward for the club. But Duffy, to me, was their main threat on the night. Like, but it unsettled him a bit, because you know, when you're setting up your training during the week, you are working with a back three. You are working with a midfield players that are coming and linking with the back three. And then, you know, when you get the injury, it changes the whole perspective on how you want to play and how you want to build up. And particularly from the attacking sense, maybe not necessarily, you know, defensively, because defensively you'll always get 10 players behind the ball, or 8 players or 9 players behind the ball. That's generally not an issue. But particularly from an attacking perspective, where you want to get wide, you want to get players in the box. And I think both of them were trying to cancel each other out. When you looked at the systems when they started off, it looked as if they were trying to match each other up. And it probably gave Rovers a little bit of an impetus when Gartland did go off.
Yeah. Couple of chances for the likes of Hoban, Duffy, one called offside. They were really putting the pressure on for most of the second half, but probably about 25, 30 minutes anyhow. They got their goal in the end, albeit a little bit too late. But with this team, I asked Harry Kenny last week, is this team going to make a start that could see them out of the championship race? He didn't think so. He thinks they're going to have enough time to be able to get themselves back in it. But surely that just is dictated by how Rovers do and how the others play at the moment. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you can play yourself over, believe it or not. I mean, you know, the fact that they've only got 1 point in 3 games doesn't all go well going forward. Like, but and sometimes when you bring, as I said to you, when you bring new players into the game or into the league, and they don't start off showing the potential straight away, and all of a sudden you find that you're 8 points behind after 3 games, and then the longer it goes on, it becomes harder to maintain and sustain your progress. I can't see them winning the league this year personally. I think Rovers are going to be the team again to catch. And when I look at the team that Rovers put out, and when I look at Finn playing in the middle of the park in his original position, and I look at the players that they brought in with Gannon to give them balance, I think McCann has been a really, really good signing, like you said earlier. And I think now you probably won't replace Jack Byrne, but McCann seems to be a really, really good footballer, a really intelligent footballer. The decisions that he's making in the middle of the park seem to be helping Mandrew go forward. Finn has always been a player, has an eye for goal, and he will get forward. With Gannon on the right and Kavanagh on the left, they seem to have a really, really balanced squad. Burke playing off Aaron Green in relation to tonight. But the one area I always said in terms of, you win a league and you want to maintain a win a league. And if you look at the teams that, if you always look at the top Italian teams or the top English teams, when they win a league, they nearly always try and buy 1 or 2 strikers, because the nucleus of the team is very good. And I don't think they have a really, really dearth of talent in that striking position. Now, I know Gaffney come on at the end for the last 15 minutes. I'm not too sure. I haven't seen enough of Gaffney. I know he played over in Ireland prior to going back to the UK. I haven't seen enough of him to say that he's going to be a real threat going forward, or can he be a goal scorer. I think Aaron Green isn't a natural goal scorer. I think he will get you goals. I don't think he's a natural goal scorer. And I think then the others will chip in, the likes of Finn and Burke, etc. So I think if they can go and get a striker, Rovers, who can guarantee you that 15. If Hoban was playing for Shamrock Rovers, I don't think, without any question of doubt, they would win the league again. And I think that's what they're missing. Outside of it, everything else, they can bring back Lopez into playing the back four. They can rotate that into a back four if they need it. They can bring Lopez into playing the back three again. They can rotate 1 or 2. Kavanagh can play in the middle of the park as well as playing on the left. So they got really good balance in that situation. But it really top goal scorer who's guaranteed 15, 20 goals. Now, I know you have to pay for that, and they're difficult to find at any level, and most teams and most managers will tell you that they're always looking for one of them. And that seems to me the only difference I can see in that Rovers side, particularly starting off the season. And the amount of players that have come into Dundalk, and I suppose not the shenanigans, but the miscommunication going on about the manager and the pro license that's on up there has caused an awful lot of madness, if you like, in the media. Is he the manager? Is he not the manager? He is the manager. Everybody knows he's the manager, but regulation states that he shouldn't be the manager. And it's a bone of contention with me as a pro license coach to say that, that teams are allowed to go and sign managers and coaches. And that's nothing against the guy himself. He's probably a brilliant bloke. I've never met him, and he's done a great job in a couple of the games he has. But, if we're regulating that you need a pro license to manage in this league, you should have a pro license before you start. And I think I think that's another debate going forward for most of the teams in here. And it just seems to me that, the FEI, it's a token gesture to say that, we let him be the manager, but we won't. And I think it's confusion all around up there, and it's probably caused that a little bit of confusion on the park.
Yeah, I think it's kind of it's a slap in the face for the rules, because it makes no odds whether the rules are there or not. And yeah, definitely, if the rules there, and there should be that person should be in place, and you can see by a mile by just standing and looking at the sideline that who's manager and who's not the manager. So yeah, I think that will be addressed in time, but normally these things don't get resolved very quickly. Sligo Rovers today started off the two games with a 1-0 victory down in Longford. You were down in Longford for a while. What's Longford like? I was thinking about it when I was looking at the ground, and I was thinking, is there teams in the league that need supporters to do well? Would the likes of Longford benefit now at home with the supporters behind them? Or I'm kind of looking at sometimes the likes of even Finn Harps have got onto a great start this year. I'm kind of thinking, is there a little bit of hostility up there when they're not winning, or what is it? So is it a big thing? Because we see all these games. There's a lot of home away wins, likes of Finn Harps away and against Sligo away here. How much of a big deal is it having the fans there and the likes of Longford and the teams, especially down near the bottom? Is that the extra man they need?
Yeah, I do agree with you on that, I have to say, Roy. I think if you look at the evolution of Finn Harps, is they've narrowly avoided relegation in a couple of playoffs over the last 3 or 4 years. And what Ollie has done is he's been able to build a team over 3-4 years. And what Finn Harps as a club haven't done is they haven't sacked him for not doing too well. And he's a fantastic football coach. He's a fantastic football manager. And anyone that knows him, and I've had a lot of experience with Ollie over the years, he's very dogged, and he is, really, really, really big on planning and tactical planning around his teams and how he sets his teams up. And you would meet him at any ground in Ireland across the country. He probably, out of all the managers in the league, travels the most in terms of watching other teams play. And, you could meet him, as I said, on any ground going forward. And the amount of, attention to detail that he puts into his teams is second to none. There's no doubt about that. But the one thing I will applaud Finn Harps is that they give him a bit more time. And he's now reaping those rewards in relation to the start that he's had. And he's signed some good players. And every year he's got the team stronger and stronger and stronger. They wouldn't have the biggest budget, as you know. I think they've had a great announcement there today where they got a few bob released from the government in relation to the new stadium, which is going to augur well going forward. And I think that, if they can stick with Ollie and he can get 1 or 2 more players in, that he will definitely be in a better position this year than he was last year and the year before. And I think the longer he can keep that going, and I think with Rovers, sticking by Stephen Bradley, particularly after the first 2 years of his management career, and there was 1 or 2 people calling for his head, that you do have to give these managers time. I didn't get that when I was at Bowes after the first season. I think 8 games in, 1 or 2 people weren't too happy with the fact that we were down 3rd or 4th from bottom. and it was a difficult time. And you just do have to sit tight with the manager that you have in place, particularly if you believe in him. And fair play to Ollie. It's a great start for them, and long may that continue. But the fact that the board stuck with him, I think they have to be applauded. Like, with Longford, it's a little bit different. I think it's a club that when myself and Alan Matches were down there, we won some great cups. We were a very, very good cup team. We never really got to the stage where we could get into that top four. I think Alan had left then and went to Cork, particularly to chase a so-called bigger club at the time when Cork were really flying. But Longford as a club is very, very well structured. It's the people behind the club know exactly what's going on. Jim Hanley, who's the chairman down there, and he's been down there for a long time, has been very dogged in relation to how they build that club up. And as you say yourself, it is a community club. There's an awful lot of really good people down in that area, really good supporters, and they will be missing the support at the club because they were, as you say, that 12th man that sometimes you needed. And they've had a good start. I mean, it was a fantastic draw that they had last week against Bows. And anyone that's 2-0 down at half time away to Bows, you're looking at this, you're looking at it and you're sort of saying, this could be 4-5, like, and then they get a goal back. And by all accounts, I haven't seen a lot of the game that they probably could have nicked it at the end, like. But I think if you're Longford, and if you're a Longford supporter now, you're just happy for them to stay in the league this year.
Yeah. I watched the game today. It wasn't the most exciting game. It was a very close game. There was nothing in it. And Sligo have made a great start to the season, and there's a lot of plaudits for them. But Longford, you wouldn't notice the difference between the two sides. And as you said, Longford have made a good start. But when we look at Sligo's forward line, you think, right, these are sharp. These could be something this year. When you look at Longford, you're kind of like, even you're talking there as well, that if they stay up, it's a big thing. But they've got some good players. I looked at Dervin in the midfield, Aaron Bulger in the midfield, Dylan Grimes I thought was really good. There's one thing now I'll talk. There's Paddy Kirk. There was a challenge in the game, and you won't have seen the challenge, but there was actually a challenge in the Rovers game. Wasn't too far off. And it was a real hard challenge from Romeo Parks. And he went through, he didn't go through the man. He was running with the ball, Paddy Kirk. Romeo knocked him flying over the sideline, won the ball, knocked him flying over the sideline. Because there was such a clatter in the challenge, they're now seemingly, it's like aggression is not allowed in football. And this was a perfectly legit tackle. And I think there was one in the Shamrock Rovers game where he came in. He didn't come in. He kind of came in from the side. I think it was the foreigner, the left full on Gannon. The game is starting to change a lot now, isn't it? It's starting to turn into a game, when you're defending, a game of interception rather than the tackle has been taken out of the game. And that's really disappointing me, because it's one of the things that you always loved was a good tackle going in, and it lifted the spirits of a team, not even the crowd, but the team and the crowd, So is that something you're noticing now as well? It's disappointing me.
Well, I always said, and I think I've gone on record a couple of times, particularly up the north of Ireland as well, is there's a huge difference between a mistimed tackle and a malicious tackle. And the difference. You should know the difference. Most of the crowd, any supporters that are going watching the game, would certainly know the difference between a mistimed tackle and a malicious tackle. I'm coming from an era where tackles were plenty of tackles coming from various different angles in our game when we were playing back in 80, 85, 86, 87. And I even go back further than me, the Norman Hunters and the Billy Bremners and John Giles here, and you look at some of the tapes and you look at some of the clips there, and in my area is more Vinnie Jones type of area, and particularly in the League of Ireland. Then when you come back in the north of Ireland is a challenge. There's some good, really tough challenges that, as you say yourself, get supporters off their seats. It's as good as a goal, particularly if it's on your side and it's for you and you have a player that's doing it, and it can get the crowd excited, and that whole emotion can filter from the crowd back in onto the pitch, where the players can feel it and feel that sensitivity. And you're right, it has gone. I mean, it's you just don't see it anymore. You don't see it in the UK. You don't see it in Ireland. You see referees, can't wait to blow the whistle, in a sense, instead of just take a few more seconds, take a deep breath, sit back and say, analyze it. Was it malicious? Was it really that malicious, or was it mistimed? And the pace of the game and the intensity of the game that we have and we're playing nowadays, it'd be a lot quicker than when I was playing, but still the intensity is really, really high. It's an intensity sport. That's what it is. It's, there's actions taking place left, right, and center every second. And I think sometimes referees don't get that. And I don't think, particularly in my day, we used to have a laugh at referees, and I always tell a story about a referee, and I make a tackle and I'm going up to the referee, and before he can book me, I try to get into his head, and I say to him, I says, "Can I ask you a question?" And he says, "Yeah." I says, "What would you do if I called you a B?" I'm not going to mention the word because we're online. And he says, "Well, I couldn't really do anything to, if you're going to call me a B, he says, I'd have to send you off for foul and abusive language." And I says, what would you do if I thought you were a B? He says, "Well, I couldn't really do much because you're only thinking it." And I says, well, I think you're a B. And he sort of laughed at me, and it took the whole deflection away from him sending me off. And we got some great laughs out of it going forward, and I got away with a few yellow cards at the time. But I certainly just would like to see the referees communicate a little bit more with the players. And you can do that at the start of season, in the seminars that take place going forward. And I don't think there is enough communication between maybe the PFAI or the PFAI can play. Stephen McGuinness can do a little bit of work from that side of things. And I know there has been workshops that they're trying to get managers to come in and talk a little bit more. But ultimately, they seem to think that, they do things, they are an organisation that they're trying to professionalise. There's no doubt about that. But they're under a bit of pressure because they have referee observers who are in the stand, and they seem to think that they're, every mistake that they're making, that these observers are commenting on, and maybe that needs to be addressed more, going forward. But certainly that communication between players, managers, and the referee needs to improve first and foremost. And I'd like to see one or two more of the referees actually having a bit of a laugh with the referee.
Yeah. Is it because there's somewhat there, Christy Moran, I know a football manager of mine, you love the tackle, right? He knows, I probably calls him a grief now with a few of the tackles. So apologies, Christy. I hope I was worthwhile. But yeah, is it that they're under so much pressure now, referees, that are they even enjoying it themselves now? All seriousness is just total seriousness for them now, and they don't seem to be out there being able to have a bit of banter with the players at all. A good referee gets the players on their side.
Absolutely, yeah. And at the end of the day, it is a game. I know there's livelihoods at stake, and I think I was listening to a podcast or we were watching a show there about John Aldridge, and he's been interviewed, and he says, would you rather play in this era where there's loads of money, or would you, rather play in the area that you played? And he says he would have. He says no way would he love to play in this year, even though there's more money. He says he would never replace the camaraderie, the bit of crack, the seriousness at times, the few points that they had in terms of after games and stuff like that. He said he'd never like to, play in the modern era, if that was the case. Obviously, he would have liked to make more money. We all would like to have done that. And I think I'd be the same. I think that, the friendships that we made, and even some of the players that I would have kicked and players would have kicked me, and really tough rivalries going back for, most of the clubs that I played for. I mean, when we see each other today, or we meet each other when the pubs were open, and we'd have a pint and we'd have a laugh and we'd have a joke, and we still have that camaraderie, even though we're finished and we're retired, and some of us are into coaching, some of us into management, but there doesn't seem to be that sort of camaraderie outside of the game with the modern player. And they seem to go home, it's on a PlayStation, it's stuck away in the house, they don't seem to be talking as much as they used to, so there are, albeit they have that more, I suppose they're in the limelight more, and they have to be careful, particularly with social media now. And you do have to be careful. You are a professional, you have to be very careful in terms of people don't see you out socializing before games and stuff like that. And there was a lot of players, unfortunately, that used to go out and do a lot of socializing before the game, never mind after the game when I was playing. So the professionalism is great to see, there's no doubt about it. The intensity has definitely improved, but I think where are those characters? I want to see more of those characters in the game, on the pitch and off the pitch, where, you know, don't take it so serious. Yes, we all want to win the league. We all want to qualify for Europe, but we have to do it in a way that, you know, we can have a laugh, we can have a joke, we can talk to supporters. And I remember when I was playing, we used to go in and have a beer with the supporters after a game. And the supporters would be having a chat with us, whether we won, lose, or draw. You know, you'd have to face that. But you were open and honest. You were saying, look, I mean, I made mistakes. I mean, I'm not perfect. And they accepted you for that as well. And I think it bonded the supporters much more with the players in there. And you just don't see that now. You don't see that particularly in the last, in the last maybe, decade or so.
Definitely not, and I've seen it at younger age level, as in kids going into junior football, if you want to call it junior football, where they go up to a match, go to training, and they go back and they don't see teammates other than those 3-4 hours of the week where they play. Where when we were playing, if it was in League of Ireland or if it was in that level of football, Leinster Senior League, it was. These were your mates. Everyone was together, so you would socialise outside, you socialise inside, and it made for a better team overall. So yeah, it's definitely the football at every level, I think, is kind of losing that as well. We'll just have a look at a few of the results. Shells 3, Bray 3. So that's obviously a decent game, a cracking game. Again, Bray dropping points. Athlone 3, Galway 1. That's a surprise. Treaty beat Wexford 1-0 and Cabinteely beat Cork 1-0. So it looks like it could be anyone's in that division this year, Aaron.
Yeah, well, as I said to you, if you're doing any betting, particularly on the first division, you really are, you don't know what way that's going to go. I mean, Galway and Athlone, obviously a derby, a West Midlands derby, if you like. We did predict, myself and Nathan here a few weeks back, that Athlone would be the dark horses, and I still think that would be the case. But I certainly didn't think they'd beat Galway 3-1, and particularly after them drawing 0-0 with Shells last week. And I still think Galway will be thereabouts. As I said, it's early doors. Cabinteely have had another good start again. They seem to always, last couple of seasons, they've had a good start. Can they sustain that now is the big question. Treaty, definitely after coming into the league with a draw and against Bray, good Bray side, and particularly going down to 10 men last week, they seem to start very well, and they'll be more than happy with the position within the league after a couple of games. Bray, 2 draws, you'd sort of look at it, and Shells 2 draws. It seems to be that there's going to be a lot of draws in the league this year. And maybe if you're a betting man and you want to get an accumulator up, maybe the draws are going to be the way to get you a couple of quid. And it's going to be like that, I think, between now and the end of the season. I think it's going to be very, very hard to predict which team's going to beat which team. It's going to be on the day. It's going to be on how many teams, how many players they're going to, the freshness of the players that they have. And who can avoid injuries to really key players going forward. So very early stages within that league, and it'll be interesting to see, who can put a run of wins together. Cabinteely seem to be the one that are doing at the moment, and the next, it really doesn't settle down, Roy. I have to say, maybe 8-9 games into the season, you start to see, things taking shape. What teams are going to struggle? What teams are going to be in the mid-table, and what teams are going to be at the top? So, as I said to you, it's very hard to predict, who is going to, be a force within that league. But you would have to think that the teams spending the most money are going to come to the fore, particularly within those 8 weeks. And I always use that 8 weeks sort of parameter as the basis of who is going to win or who is going to be, challenging and who's going to be in that relegation zone.
Yeah. Again, if you're watching, you can send in your comments or send in any questions at all. Fire away in the comment section on the side. Aaron, just something you mentioned there. When you draw a game, or you've drawn a few games in a row, as a manager, can it be very easy to get into a mindset that you've actually lost those games, like the disappointment of not winning certain games, and then there's a little bit of pressure from, I don't know, maybe the media, or they've commented about it a few times that you haven't won in 4 games, but you might not have lost in 4 games. How do you cope with that kind of situation? Where is that something that you would just brush aside and go, listen, we're not losing, we're not far off, or is it something that does tend to seep in and you have to snap yourself out of it?
I think it depends on a couple of things. One is you might be drawn, and you could be drawn 0-0 quite a lot. So you'd be worried about the fact that, okay, you've got your point, but you're not actually creating too many chances and you're not scoring too many chances. You look at the Bray game tonight and you look at the Shells game, 3-3. Last week it was 0-0 down in Galway. So the 3-3, so both teams have scored 3 goals. So from an attacking perspective, you're quite pleased that, you know, you're going forward and you're scoring goals and you're creating chances. And then the flip side of it is defensively, what's happening there? We got a clean sheet last week. You know, how do you sort of cope with the goals that you've conceded? You know, were the individual errors? If they were individual errors, obviously players then are going to have to take responsibility. Or was it from a tactical ploy or, you know, a tactical intention that, you know, you overseen, particularly when you were doing the analysis on the game, that you got wrong as a manager or you got wrong as a coaching team. And then if you're losing 3-2 in the last minute and you get a 90-minute equaliser, the whole emotion changes. You know, you get a bit of euphoria that you've saved the point. So, you know, I always looked at it from a situation where, are we creating chances to score goals? And if we're conceding goals, why are we conceding the goals, or how are we conceding the goals? Are we conceding a goal from, you know, my systems of play, or are we conceding goals where they're individual errors? Like you look at the second goal, as you say, that Dundalk conceded tonight. It was an individual error from the keeper. Sometimes you can do all the work you want and all the planning you want during the week, and then an individual error happens like that. And sometimes that's part and parcel of the game. But I think because it's only 2 games in, I think if you were asking me that question after 6 or 7 or 8 games, you definitely would start to be a little bit worried, but certainly not after 2 or 3 games. You never like to be at the bottom of the league or in the bottom half of the league after 2 games, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, if you know that, you know, you're playing catch up because you haven't really played enough games in pre-season, and I still think most of the teams are at that stage where their first 6 games within the league is nearly like their pre-season. And that's why I'm not really looking too much at where teams are positionally at this present time. And I will do, as I said to you, after 8 or 9 or 10 games. And a lot of the preseason games weren't really games because of COVID and because the fact that they were only coming back training. So it really is your first series of games, whether you like it or whether you don't like it, or whether supporters know about that, is your preseason, and everybody's looking at each other in those preseason games.
And I'm looking at it, just kind of works my way around to Declan Devine in Derry City, because he hadn't got the greatest results. He hadn't got the greatest of seasons last year. He's made a slow start again. As a manager, again, you've obviously experienced good and bad situations. Does it eat away at you? Does it gnaw away at your confidence? Or do you have to have that thick skin and just keep doing the stuff that you believe in?
Well, I think Stephen Kenny summed it up, didn't he, during the week there, you know, when he was playing, and, you know, he believes in what he's trying to do. He has that belief that he will turn around. Now, the longer it goes on, the more difficult it's going to get. There's no doubt about it. And I can, you know, recall my first 5 games when I was managing Bohemians, when I took over. We didn't have a point in the first 5 games. And in the 6th game, we drew against Pats. And it was like winning the league for me, because it meant that we were, you know, I said, that's it. That's all. We just needed one thing to change. And that result, that draw we got 0-0 at home to Pats at the time, was a turning point in us. After 5 games, not having 1 point, and, you know, going away to Derry, losing 2-1, you know, losing at home to Shells, you know, 1-0. We were only losing by the odd goal. It was very, you know, I could see progress all throughout those games. I could see what we were trying to do. Hopefully we were communicating the intention of the team and what way we wanted to play, what way we wanted the individuals to play within that structure. And I could see it improving each week. Sometimes the supporters can't see that. They can only see the end result. The outcome is that, you know, we've lost again. But if you have that belief that you know what the intentions and the communication between the players are, and you know, you have that belief, because, you know, throughout anyone's career and through anyone's management career, including Stephen's, and I know Stephen, you know, was sacked from Rovers when I was down at Bowes, and then I was sacked at Bowes when he was at Dundalk. You learn from those. You learn from those experiences. They're certainly not great positions to be in. Don't get me wrong, but you do have to rely on your knowledge. You do have to rely on your training, and you do have to rely a little bit on your experience in the game. That if you know that you're training hard and training right, that things will change. And if they don't, inevitably you're going to get sacked, and that's just the lay of the land. And if you've given 120%, 110%, and you know that you've given everything you have within that position, and things don't work out, well, then that's life. You just have to move on and take it on the chin. And then, if you do get sacked, you bring into the next club that you get, and you hopefully learn from those experiences.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're enthused yourself to get back into it. Are you missing football at the moment? And I know you're still doing a bit of coaching, but are you missing that League of Ireland buzz?
Yeah, I am. I'm missing the coaching side of it. I'm missing actually being just going to a game, not necessarily managing and coaching. Obviously, I'd love to get an opportunity to get back in at some stage. And it's like every other manager that's out, Hardy Kenny included, where, we talk to each other when we see each other as we're walking around. We don't get to see or talk to as much as we used to. But when you're at games and games are live and you're going to the games and you're meeting the players and the managers and the coaches that you've been around for the last 15 years, you get a great buzz out of it. And I certainly missing going to the League of Ireland games. There's no doubt about that. And watching the game tonight on TV, there's no substitute for being at. There's no substitute whatsoever. And I can understand, the supporters are missing out on these games. And I can just hope that the government can get these vaccines out as quickly as they can, and they can get supporters back into the grounds. Just for the whole social end of it, for the buzz, for the players, for the managers and coaches at the teams, and for the country as a whole. It's just, get people back into the grounds, get the singing and the dancing and the flares, and make the games good to go to again. And hopefully that can happen sooner rather than later.
Okay, we'll leave it on that positive note. Let's hope we get there fairly soon. Aaron, thanks very much for your time. Anyone who was listening and looking, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends. And we'll see you next week for the League of Ireland.